Welcome to the Motor Machinist Mate Second Class William Moffett PT Boat Seminar. This is a pass-fail course. There will be a quiz at the end. Okay. Why me? This is what started it all, and I'll get back to this in a little bit. I really like history. In 1962, I was in second grade. JFK was in the White House, and everybody knew about PT 109. I built the model then. I built it 3 times since. Ever since then, I've been enamored. Fast forward about 28 years to a gathering of the Walpack Historical Society with a picnic on the lawn of the old church there in Walpack. I saw an older gentleman with a PT boat jacket on. So I went over to him and asked him who he knew that was in PT boats, and he said, me. But you can probably imagine what the rest of the day accomplished. 2 of us. To borrow a line from Casablanca, it was the start of a beautiful friendship. Bill had finally found someone who would hang on his every word of what he was saying about his beloved PT boats. He turned to his wife Gloria and said, "This guy really likes PT boats." Her reaction was a nice, broad smile. She was probably as happy for Bill as she was for herself, because now there was someone else who could tell the story today. So the real reason I'm up here in front of you is to tell you the story of Bill Moffett and his World War II experience, leading up to and including D-Day. So this book, it's called The Knights of the Sea. This is why I'm here. As you can probably assume, Bill and I became very good friends. His family could sense this. When Bill passed in 1996, his daughters gave me this book. It was his. This has the whole history of the PT boats in it. It's got Bill in it. It's got his shipmates in it. It's got his squadrons in it. Everything's here. To say that I was honored would be an understatement. I promised them that I always have it, and I always keep it in my library, that it would always have a good home. Over the years, I toyed back and forth with getting the family together and kind of telling Bill's story. And so this was 22 years ago, and the grandchildren were really small, and I thought that they needed to know really what their grandfather did. And I thought about it back and forth, and you know, the best laid intentions, it does never happen. So last year, I decided that the book really belonged back with the family, not with me. But it needed to go back with all of the honor and reverence that it, Bill, and the book deserved. So I called my friend Diane Green, Bill's niece, and asked her to get her cousins and family together so that we could tell the story and give the book back. This was supposed to happen like in Diane's living room, with a fire in the fireplace and some snacks and a few people. Well, you can see it's turned into something more than a living room with holes. So we went back and forth with all sorts of dates and trying to get as many of the family members together. That brings us to today. So you can see that it's grown a bit. So now that we know that this is really about Bill and that his story will be told soon, we first need to lay the groundwork, and you all need to learn about PT boats, why and how they became so special, and Bill's serendipitous involvement with some of the most famous PT boaters of all. In order to do this, we're going to look at several different aspects, facts, stories, before bringing Bill back into this, his story. So this is class participation. Who can tell me something about PT boats? You can raise your hands. Nobody knows anything about PT boats. Okay, this is good. So I know
I would.
What?
I would.
Okay, I knew that was going to be the first answer, and it's wrong. They are made of mahogany. Everybody thinks that they're made out of plywood, which is fine. They are made out of wood. Most Navy boats, obviously, are made out of steel. These are made out of double planked mahogany. No.
Not mahogany plywood.
No, not mahogany plywood. As you can see here, this gentleman is putting 1 3/4 inch screws into the second. This is the outer hull, the outer planking of the hull. So he'll screw those in, and when they get in a little too far, he'll put a little bung inside there, notch it off, the paint goes over it. But these things were built, you can see gentlemen here, with some clamps and things, putting all of this whole thing together. So these were really, really well-built boats made out of really good materials. Here's an assembly line. This is the Higgins boat, which is what Bill was on. This plant is in New Orleans. So, I think I just gave away the next answer. How many kinds were there? 2, yes. Elkos and Higgins. Anybody know where the Elkos were built? New Jersey. Right down in Bayonne. If you're familiar with Bayonne, the tip comes down around, you come out of Newark Bay. Right on the western side of that, the eastern side of Newark Bay, western side of Bayonne, was a huge plant, which I don't have a picture of. And most of it was there until just a few years ago when it was torn down. But they did preserve the large, there's a big crane in this picture right here. And they saved that. And if you go over, that's 78. If you go over Newark Bay on 78, going like towards the Holland Tunnel, if you look off to your right, there's a little park, and they have this crane on the water with all the honor that it deserves. Calling about Elko PT boats, but probably 75% of the PT boats were Elkos, and that's the kind that PT 109 was. That was an Elko boat. Bill was in a Higgins boat, which was built in New Orleans. This is a Higgins boat, and I don't have a big picture of an Elko to show you the difference. Most of it was there was a day room here, which was very comfortable for the men down below. Gave them a little bit more room rather than just a deck over their heads. But this is the kind that Bill was on. The hull was a little different than an Elko. It rode a little bit better. Here's another picture of a Higgins boat. You can see that there's no day room back here. It's just one flat deck going all the way to the stern. This is Bill, by the way. The picture is fuzzy, but anybody that knows Bill, if you can see the smile, that's Bill. So, let's talk about some important PT boaters. This book came out in 1945. It's called They Were Expendable. Has anyone seen the movie? Awesome.
John Wayne.
Yes, yes. Oh, it's so good. John Wayne, Robert Montgomery, Donna Reed, Ward Bond, and it was directed by John Ford. So I have my copy over here, which you cannot have. But if you can rent it, it's one of the only times you will be able to see real PT boats in action. I'm not talking about McHale's Navy or any of those things. These guys they were Elkos. They had regular crews man them. Of course, the talent did their stuff, but it was regular PT boaters that were actually on, running the boats, obviously. And you can see them underway. You can see how they were fueled, how the torpedoes ran, how everything worked. I highly, highly recommend it. So anyway, this book here, this was about Lieutenant John D. Bulkley. He retired a vice admiral. So right after Pearl Harbor, Manila was attacked next. I forget the exact date, but it was only a few days later. So they were caught as surprised as Pearl Harbor was. And we had the first squadron of PT boats was in Manila. There were only 4 boats. Bulkley was the commander of those boats. No one saw the potential of PT boats. Everybody thought, oh, they're nice, they're cute. Maybe we can use you to run messages back and forth across the bay. So they were assigned to messenger duty until something really important came up and somebody realized that they could do it. They were charged with getting MacArthur out of Manila, off of Corregidor, around the Philippine Islands, down to Mindanao, where he was going to be evacuated to Australia, and from there he would then take on taking over as commander of the whole Pacific theater. So, for his work, John Bulkley, the lieutenant commander of that little squadron, he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. So now you guys are only 2 or 3 degrees separated from knowing the Medal of Honor recipient, because you're going to find out that Bill knew Bulkley, you knew Bill, he knew the guy. There's your 3 degrees. Guess, by the way, guess where Lieutenant Commander Bulkley is from? New Jersey. Hackettstown. After a short stint in Washington and a few other postings, he was chosen to head up a very small but highly important squadron of PT boats assigned to help the OSS, which is the Office of Strategic Services, which is the program of the CIA. They were to gather information about the coast of France across the English Channel from England. Who can guess what this has been leading up to?
Dunkirk.
There you go. Right here. So, this painting, which Bill gave me, is signed by Admiral Bulkley. It was commissioned by the Normandy Foundation when we were coming up on the 50th anniversary of Normandy. There were a lot of things that we were done. The Normandy Foundation commissioned this painting, and it's a painting of the PT boats. They led this whole thing in. They had to protect the minesweepers. The minesweepers had to go in first because how do you get an LST through if you got mines all over it? So this is called Clearing the Lanes. Commander John D. Bulkley's PT boats escort U.S. naval minesweepers at the tip of the Utah Beach invasion spearhead. D-Day 0500, June 6, 1944. So it's signed by Bulkley. Now, Bill has one of these too. The family must have it somewhere. Because he bought 2. He gave 1 to me. So on the back, as I do with everything that's important to me, I put a picture of me and Bill, and the little story of it here, and the story of how this guy here got to be the commissioner. Guess where the guy who painted the picture is from? New Jersey. I love it when you do it. Here's a blow-up of that picture of Bill, and I noticed the lack of gray hair on me. And I'm a lieutenant too. All right, now on to another important PT boat person, one of Bill's really good friends, Lieutenant Bud Liebenauer. Who knows the story of PT 109? Well, everybody knows that, right?
Kennedy.
So, Bud Liebenauer was the skipper of the 157 boat, who, after a few days, when Kennedy had gotten his guys to shore, and then Kennedy would swim out every night into the channel trying to signal down anybody passing. And he did this for several days, and finally got a message out. It was the 157 boat that came back to pick up Kennedy, and it was skippered by Bud Liebenauer. And this is Bud here, campaigning with John Kennedy, because that was a big part of the presidential campaign and even his run for Congress. So, so another thought about Commander Bulkley and the way he did things. He was one of these no-holds-barred kind of guys in the Navy. At the height of the Cold War, he was given command of Guantanamo Bay. Now, the cool thing about Guantanamo Bay, it's a U.S. Navy base right in Cuba, and it's still there. And it was there through the whole thing. I think it was a treaty in 1903 that gave it to us. But the water for the base was supplied by Cuba. Had this big water main coming in. So Castro goes, well, I'm going to cut off your water. Bulkley goes, go ahead. He built a desalination plant. Cut the pipe himself. So, there's a picture of John Bulkley. And there's a political cartoon in there of Admiral Bulkley wiping his hands and the water pipe stuffed over Castro here. Something kind of like, shove it. So the guy had a cool way of dealing with things. And there's a little story about him too. So locally had us loosen the turnbuckles on the mainstays of our PTs. Now, PT boats, when they would travel to wherever they were gonna go, they were on the backs of other big boats, because they were too small to go across the ocean by themselves. So they put them on transports. He had loosened the turnbuckles on the mainstays of our PTs, so in the event our tanker was torpedoed by U-boats and settled gradually, it might be possible to float our PTs clear of their deck trailers. Should one or all of the PTs survive a torpedoing, Wilkie said, we might be able to save our own men and the tanker's crew and even attack the submarines. Most persons, if torpedoed, would be thinking of survival, but Bulkley was thinking of attacking the U-boats. He was quite a man. So, it's a fun story. Every year, Bill would volunteer a weekend to go up to Fall River, Massachusetts, where the USS Massachusetts is Battleship Cove. So they've got the battleship there, the destroyer Joseph P. Kennedy, the submarine the Lionfish. There's 2 PT boats up there in a Quonset hut. And Bill and another volunteer from PT Boats, the Veterans Organization, would go up and be the docents for the weekend. One of them is an Elko, fully restored but not operational, and the other is a Higgins, still original with all that wonderful sensory experiences that can only be had with an original World War II fighting machine. In fact, this Higgins boat was used in President Kennedy's inaugural parade. No one knew the difference between a Higgins and an Elko, except the PT boaters, but nobody cared. Around 1994 or so, I asked 2 friends of mine if they would like to go on an adventure, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, as I build it. After receiving an affirmative answer, I told them that I would pick them about 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning. They had no idea where they were going. We drove for hours up Route 95 until we got to Fall River. As you go over the Big Bay Bridge, off on the left you can see Battleship the Massachusetts. They then assumed they knew where they were going. Ah! Little did they know that the best was yet to come. We were early, so we went to breakfast, and then we were the first ones lined up at the admission gate. I kept an eye out for Bill to arrive for his duty. Soon he approached the workers' gate, and with his fellow docent, he saw me and waved over to us. "Hi, Don," he yelled, waving back. "Good morning, Bill." I stole a look at my 2 friends' faces. They now knew something was up. Well, obviously our first call of the day was the PT boats. After introductions were made, we were invited to come aboard the PT boats. Mind you, this was definitely not a casual visitor's tour. No one gets to go on the boats, except us. We spent hours there on deck, below decks, listening to the tales of the 2 veterans as they recalled many of their old war stories. To say that this was one of the highlights of my existence on this planet would be an understatement. After the PT boats were toured and the battleships and other exhibits were done, we were finally late in the day, we headed for home. My friends were kind of quiet as we started driving southbound. It took a few minutes until one of them softly said, "Now I know what you meant by it, once in a lifetime opportunity." That was the last year that Bill was physically able to volunteer to Fall River. PT boats are some of the scarcest sought-after World War II artifacts. Most of them never made it back home after the war because transportation was difficult. They arrived in their respective theaters of war on the decks of much larger ships because they are definitely not the best ocean-going vessels. So getting them back home would be a logistical nightmare. Most were burned and destroyed where they were used last. But if you aren't so inclined, there are 2 operational PT boats left, and they became that way with a lot of effort on the parts of their respective PT boat organizations. One, PT 658, is in Portland, Oregon, and the other, PT 605, is in New Orleans, the city where it was built. Both of those boats are Higgins boats. You can actually book rides on these boats. If you go up to the Hudson River to Kingston, you go down by the backwater, the little road that goes down to the back, and you'll find several old hulls, all wrapped up in pretty bad shape, waiting for someone to restore them. I can't wait for them to arrive. So why PT boats in the English Channel, and why were they Higgins? PT boats are relatively small. They range from 77 to 80 feet long. can go pretty fast compared to other boats and ships. They generally can do about 40 knots or so. When you took all the torpedoes off of them and reduced their weight, they can get up to about 50 knots. Good for getting there fast, and probably more important, getting out of there fast. Another feature is their ability to be stealthy. Normally, their three 1,000 horsepower Packard engines are quite loud. But when you take your exhaust, this is the stern, the transom exhaust, the exhaust would come out here. With the flip of these levers, we close that off. This is the water line. We send the exhaust down below, underneath the water, so that it's quiet. Not totally silent, but enough for them to be effective. As for being Higgins boats, the Higgins hull was designed better suited for open seas and was far more maneuverable than the Elk boats. Not comfortable, but it rode better than the boat. Riding gears good. Combine the usual conditions of the English Channel with the need to be as evasive as possible, and you get the Higgins boat. So now you know a little bit about PP boats and some of the important men who served on them. Let's talk about Bill. Machinist mate William Moffett went through his basic training in 1942 at Camp Moffett at Great Lakes Training Center, Illinois. At his first roll call, he was asked by the ensign if he knew who the camp was named for. Replying that he did not surf, he was given a pass to the library in 24 hours to find out the experience he never forgot. Turns out, William Moffett, not our Bill, the guy that was named after, was a little on the revolutionary side in the Navy. He organized things a little bit differently, and when the need for this, you could see the war was coming and stuff like that, he really organized these camps really well. And it was very effective, and they ended up naming the camp after him. Still good. While he was there, he volunteered for PP boats and was transferred to Melville, Rhode Island, where all of the PP boat training took place. It's actually right down the road from Fall.